Okay, and then maybe I'll just get started now. So if anybody joins us along the way, they'll be able to catch up. But I just wanted to give us a quick introduction. Good afternoon, and welcome to our Petuum podcast. That's kind of a tongue twister. This Friday afternoon, we're discussing how to compose a modular ML pipeline with no glue code. And we're joined by Adil Islam and Victor Leo. We'll have them introduce themselves in a little bit, but just to give you some background on who we are at Petroleum and what we do, our mission is to unlock human productivity and well-being by automating and scaling AI ML operations. Our team is composed of deep research experience as well as expertise across many different industry verticals. So you can take a look at some of the people that we have on board. We have a open source tradition coming out of a project called CASL. So a lot of our researchers have worked on that project, as well as experience in heavy manufacturing, logistics, AV, healthcare and finance, education, pretty much everything across the board that utilizes AI ML technology. And we have encountered some issues in the machine learning operations process that are problems that we've been trying to solve at Petuum with what we're calling the Petroleum Platform, which we'll talk a little bit more about today. But just to give you a sense of the landscape of ML ops, I don't know if anyone in the room wants to join in the chat, but you can just let us know, yay or nay, if you identify as being someone with an ML ops role at your organization. It's something that we're still studying. It's a kind of nascent term. And this is a bit of a map for how we see ML ops kind of coming through from data ops, and then the different machine learning responsibilities that often fall with different members of an AI team, often ML engineers, as well as other members that are on the AI team. So experimenting, deploying, and managing different AI models at organizations. So if you're in one of these roles, or if you're at a company who has an ML AI robust team that you think would be interested in talking with us, I'll give you our contact information now. You can shoot us an email at marketing@petuum.com and just let us know a little bit about what kind of challenges you guys struggle with your machine learning operations. We just launched our private beta. So we're working with a small group of customers to address their challenges in ML ops with our platform, which is what we're going to talk a little bit more about today. But yeah, get at us if you'd like to apply to be a beta customer, or if you have any insights you'd like to share. Now on with the show. Let me introduce our two panelists today. I'll stop my screen share so we can see their beautiful faces. Our first is Adil Islam. Adele, you are our lead product manager. Want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what you like to do, how impressive your background is?
All right. Well, I'm from Pakistan originally. I came here many moons ago. I guess I started in the data science realm before it was really data science at the World Bank. We had this forecasting application called I Simulate that I helped build. I did a bunch of things. I guess most recently I came from IBM Watson, and before that I was at Dell/EMC, where I was focused more on the infrastructure space. Happy to answer more questions anyone will have about my background. There's nothing spectacular about it. I'm definitely the less technical of the people on this panel today.
Let's talk to the more technical person then. This is Hector Leo. He is one of our research scientists. And Hector, you are head of NLP for Petuum, correct?
Yeah, you can say so.
Well, let's say so. Seems like you're pretty good at it. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what your background's like?
Yeah, so I come from China, right? So I came to United States about 10 years ago, I believe. So before joining Petuum, I was doing like academic stuff, learning NLP, doing NLP research at CMU. So afterwards, I came to Petuum for a couple years, building NLP pipeline, or sometimes also building small products to serve a different kind of thing, like QA system and stuff like that. Yeah.
Very cool. All right, I'm going to just start with some questions for both of you, get a conversation going, and then I think Hector is going to share a little bit of a demo with us about Forte. So want to make sure we save time for that. But Adel, I'll start with you. I mentioned a little bit about Petuum's history and how we come out of this open source community with CASL. We know that we're going to be talking about Forte, an NLP tool today. I'm wondering if you could maybe contextualize that for us a little bit better and let us know the interplay between Petuum, Forte, and CASL.
Right. Yeah. So if you go back in the history of Petuum, and I think you showed that in your slide, there's a number of people that have contributed. They're all been from a research perspective, and Petuum started as a very research-focused organization out of CMU. A lot of people that are familiar with Eric Jing would know, the level of research integrity that is part of Petuum. And so CASL stands for Composable, Automated, and Scalable. And that's kind of the acronym, but also that's the name of the consortium for open source projects that Petuum has been supporting. Essentially, you could say everyone who does work at Petuum has been a contributor in the CASL consortium in some way or the other. There's a number of different entities within CASL. It's meant to be a consortium of lots of different packages and projects that you could leverage as part of your machine learning systems. So the relationship between CASL and Petuum is originally, organically, it is the same people, right, that are supporting CASL or they're building Petuum. And then more recently, it is in terms of the Petuum platform and how these different open source projects that are, some of them are very state of the art, some of them are pretty new, some of them are still upcoming that we're going to announce in the future. But all of them are being integrated quite deeply within the platform that is the Petuum platform.
What's the Petuum platform?
Well, yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? So the Petuum platform,
Can you tell us a little bit more about it so we have a little context?
Right. So this is our product that's in beta right now. It's something that kind of emerges from several years of deep customer engagements. And I think you had a slide that showed a lot of the different industries within which we had these engagements. What we would do is build the complete AI infrastructure, develop ML ops, and also be the ML team, and also train people up to make AI a kind of value driver for their companies. And we kind of figured out along the way that there are certain things that need to be built. One part of it is a infrastructure orchestration system, right? So if you're trying to use Kubernetes, or if you're trying to just have a control over the different packages, containers, software that you're using as part of your infrastructure, we kind of figured that part out pretty quick, built a GUI around it, started wrapping a lot of these things together to make an AI operating system. And there are other parts of this platform that is meant to be completely coherent, and it's it kind of includes parts of your work as an AI team across the band of all of these things you would do in an ML project. So the infrastructure is the baseline, most important to us. There are also universal pipelines, which I think is what we're about to talk about a lot. Forte is a major part of the universal pipeline system. And there's an experiment manager, deployment manager. There are different other aspects that are also very much experimental. We're building these out, we're betaing them, and we're also inviting people to kind of engage with us and find out if there are certain parts of this platform that they want to be a part of it, or some certain parts that they actually really love and want to even have as access to it without being deeply within the platform. We'd love to know all kinds of feedback on the platform right now. So I'm glad you asked, because we are in a beta. It's pretty new, and we're excited to have anyone give us feedback on it.
So Hector, let's talk about one of those parts, or potentially one of those parts, and how it fits in. Let's talk about Forte, since that's the title of our talk today. And it's, I read a great blog that you wrote about Forte and PyTorch, so I wanted to talk to you about it and get some of your expertise when it comes to NLP. So maybe you could talk a little bit about Forte and its role in the CASL ecosystem.
Okay, so I guess to talk about Forte, I would probably just start from the name. So why is it called Forte, right? So, like Forte actually is a short form for text at the beginning, right? So we initially figured that was a good tool we built, pipeline tool building for serving text application, for NLP application. And Forte happened to be a pretty nice, like a short name for it, right? So based on the name, Forte was initially developed as a pipeline tool with specific focus to help NLP data. We provide like good data schema around it so that you can wrap or connect a lot of NLP toolkits easily together, right? So, and also when we talk about the relationship to CASL, right? So CASL, again, is short for composable, automate, and scalable. Where Forte is highly related to the composable part, where it allows you to compose many applications, you can, allows you to compose different type of operation of the data together without worrying about the glue code, without worrying about the infrastructure too much. So that's where the Forte and the C part, composable, is highly related. It actually will probably in the future will be very relevant to the A and S part, where A stands for automation and S stands for scalable, because with a good composed pipeline, you can also automatically start to optimize it in terms of performance and scale it up into multiple machines or scale up your solutions using the compositionality and automation. This might sound a little bit abstract. So if someone has more question about it, I'm happy to discuss more. But
well,
yeah,
let's
that's
talk about data in particular. So you talked about the fact that Forte follows some standard data principles. And I know in your blog, you talk a lot about DataPack. So maybe you could walk us through exactly how Forte is handling structured and unstructured data with these DataPacks.
Yeah, sure. To be honest, we write a pretty long blog about it. So it would be great if it would be actually one way is to definitely to read the blog again. We probably will share the link somewhere. Besides the blog post, right? I can try to summarize. Yeah, I can somehow summarize the basic idea, right? So imagine it's just in the industry assembly line, right? The way that industrialization is so successful is because people standardize all the process about handling things, right? That's where we have an assembly line, and parts and components flow on the assembly line can be processed by the machines in a very effective way, right? So this thing haven't happened in ML or NLP widely enough for us to enjoy the benefits, right? So basically, I think we are at the era where ML is going to this industrialization process, scalability process. So that's why I think it's very important to solve the data issue. So basically, you can consider each data point or data package as a package that flow on the assembly line, right? So that all the machines in the future doesn't need to know where the data comes from. They don't need to like write glue code to fit the data into the machine. You just need to have like a robot arm to do the necessary thing on the data part, right? So more specifically, for data scientists, this is the way that we're trying to build an infrastructure that's really friendly for data scientists or ML engineer, so that they only need to worry about the most innovative part, the most interesting part, the algorithm part, and then enjoy all the standard infrastructure part provided by like such industrialized system, right? Yeah.
One thing I can jump in there on is that, you know, this is these principles aligning to the DataPack, right? This is actually kind of the foundation for how the Petroleum platform is approaching things. So you can obviously see that composability that's allowed by Forte and the automation, you know, the assembly line example is perfect, right? Because that's the basis of automation and scalability, right? Is also how the Petuum platform is kind of integrating not just Forte, but other elements. So I mentioned universal pipelines, for instance, right? Now that's one way in which we're taking this technology from Forte and bringing it into an SDK that somebody could use within the Petuum platform in order to build these pipeline objects that are highly composable in themselves and also highly portable across the pipeline, across all the different workstations that people might have. I remember you showed a map or a mental model that we have of all the different types of work people might be doing. So we showed experimentation, we showed the creation of actual pipelines as well, tuning of those pipelines, deployment of all of those, right? And managing and maintaining the resources, GPUs and such as you put those into deployment and production. Imagine that you're actually doing all of that with something that a Forte pipeline would look like, and you start to see the reason why we had to make a platform out of all of this, right? So it's this is almost like the fundamental object of work that flows through the factory, and the Petuum platform is able to take advantage of this kind of way of working that Forte is kind of allowing us to do, that has so many productivity enhancements, as well as literally just your experience is better as a machine learning engineer in writing a Forte pipeline.
So I really like the metaphor of the assembly line. Hector, in your assembly line and these packages, what exactly is inside each package?
Yeah, so first of all, I think I forgot to mention the name, which the DataPack, where it comes from, right? So basically, we are calling them packages along the industry line. So we just name the whole object, the concept as DataPack, right? So it's a data package basically, right? So inside the data package, we are storing the actual, what we call the payload, the actual content of the data for sure. What's more important is the additional add-ons of those content, right? So those things are produced by ML workflows or ML systems. So one particular example would be the payload might be an image that you are working on, right? A photograph that you might be working on. And the additional annotations or markup on the images would be, for example, it would be a bounding box that's enclosing a motorcycle or automobile, right? It could be a contour of a person's face, or it can be a contour of a certain role, right? So this will be a perfect example for auto driving application, right? So Forte find a way to encode this very different style, a lot of these different type of annotation, markup, or metadata on top of the original payload via a hierarchical system, right? So why we need to do that? Because if you think about it, you might say, okay, there's so many objects, so many tasks in the world. How can you standardize them all, right? So the way we do it is we don't try to standardize everything, but we standardize the top most important abstractives of these things, right? So this comes back to a simple, I always say this is a object-oriented programming 101 thing, right? So you only need to create the topmost classes, and people will inherit the low-level classes. And then all you need to do is you define the correct functions for the top-level classes, right? Hopefully this is not too technical and too abstractive.
Why don't we look under the hood? Do you mind showing us a little bit about how this works? Maybe we could see some of the code, and I'm wondering what Forte can do just off the shelf.
Okay, that's cool. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so first of all, some of these examples are adapted from previous blog posts we published, which is in Medium is this CASL project. If you go here, you can actually find more examples about how Forte works. So yeah, and also let me also put this into the chat. This is the script I'm going to demo. Yeah, and put this into the chat as well. Okay, so before we get started, well, this is pretty step-by-step thing. So hopefully everyone should be able to follow if you wanted to, but let me just do it on my own, right? So first you make sure you have a Python or pip or conda, your preferred environment install, right? And then it's pretty easy to start using Forte, right? Because nowadays in the Python world, it's just one command, right? You just install Forte. I actually already installed these packages, but I just make sure they are all here, right? Also, make sure if you want to follow our Jupyter Notebook tutorial, just make sure you also install Jupyter, right? So let me start empty notebook, and let's work through something that Forte can do.
And
right, so
audience, if you have questions as Hector goes along and you're following along, feel free to type them into the Q&A, and we'll try to make sure that they all get answered.
So is everything clear? Like you can see the notebook,
Yep.
right?
Looks
Okay.
great.
Cool. Right. So since we have already installed Forte, let's just try import it. Make sure it was correctly installed. So Forte pipeline is the thing it's the assembly line we are talking about, right? So we install the Forte pipeline, and it can help us start building the assembly line, the industrialized assembly line for NLP. Next, I'm going to import a couple pre-built processors as an example thing, right? So here I imported first a reader, which is going to read the data, as its name suggested. And then a couple very simple tools, wrapping around NLTK, a very old but quite famous natural language processing toolkit, right? So I imported 4 tools here. It should be all fine, right? Now, Forte can actually be constructed just by one line. Like the whole assembly line can be done via one line. So I just break down the line into 3 so that you can see a little bit better, right? What it starts is you create a pipeline object. You can start to set the reader to be the reader we just imported, a new reader class, and then you continuously add these processors after it. So this already creates a linear pipeline of a reader and 1, 2, 3, 4 processors. Right?
So wait, Hector, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is actually quite quite revolutionary in of itself, right? I mean, I'm you know, before seeing this for the first time, I was kind of confused because it didn't make sense to me that we had a pipeline that was actually just one command. I imagine in order to just put these different NLTK processors together, I would have to actually fill up a page or so of a notebook, right? I have to fill up quite a few lines of code, but this is just one line that has the entire pipeline. Is that right?
Yeah. So I guess I guess many people might have the confusion, and to be honest, when someone start using Forte, one thing they get confused is they don't feel these things are connected, right? They feel like they need to do additional thing to make the thing connected together. So, which is unnecessary. I told them, okay, they are actually automatically connected behind the scene via some logical methods, and it's pretty hard to understand, right? But what happens is because we are using a shared data schema from the very beginning. So one thing I always tell Forte users is like, if we want to build a pipeline, make sure you understand what your data schema is, what your data need is. Define your data schema in a way. And then each of these processors will work directly with a data schema instead of work directly with another processor, if that makes sense, right? Just imagine you have, the way to imagine this is like, if you have 5 or 10 processors, if you ask each processor to collaborate with each other individually, you need to create a 5 times 5 or 10 times 10, like collaboration, handshaking, right? But it's much easier if they all communicate with the same thing, right? Which in this case is downstream data, so that they don't care about each other. They do their own thing. As long as they are doing their own thing in the correct way, the pipeline can be assembled. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and in fact, I in the image that we used for the tag for this webinar, that might even be a great example of it. It's a pipeline might seem to be kind of very serialized. This is actually the first way in which I was actually able to visualize the fact that the pipeline of processors that we've created can actually just be, going from sentence segmenter to tokenizer and to tagger and so on. It didn't look like a pipeline the first time I saw it, which is why it's kind of striking in itself that it's actually just a single line that we're able to run.
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, it's quite easy to create a pipeline with only a single line when these processes are not interact with each other. It's quite easy, right? You can just put them together, but they just doesn't work together, right? It's not that easy to make them work together well, which is the magic behind this. I don't think we can cover all that right now, but in the some upcoming examples, I think you can at least get a sense of what I mean. Right. Okay, let me just continue a little bit on this, right? So in order to make this pipeline run, we just run some standard command like initialize, right? And to make it run, it's like initialize and process. It's already this. We already get some results. Let's just go through this. So here, the pipeline is asking me to enter some query. The reason is we create a terminal reader, and the terminal reader is reading from user input, right? So do you have anything in mind you want to type in? It's a simple pipeline, so you should be able to handle most of the text, right?
Do you guys have any questions for Forte? What about, can it talk about itself? What about what is Forte?
Right, so yeah, we are not going to answer this question. Just to a heads up, we are just going to, the machine is not going to answer the question. It's just going to do some very simple analysis on top of it, right? So let me just run that. And while it's running, let me prepare the next step. Is it running though?
You had to hit run.
Let me just run it again. Okay. Okay, now it's running. I don't know what happened just now. It might be the internet or something like that, right? We just run the thing. We actually got the output, the data package. Let's look into the data package and see what it does, right? So we hide some details, but behind the scene, we already defined some data schema, right? Some simple ones like a sentence, a token, which represent the words, right? Now we can actually go into the data pack to see how many sentences are there, right? And for each sentence, what do we get, right? This is the result, right? So for each sentence, it analyzed the previous sentence and say that there are 4 words, and each word has a POS, which stands for part of speech, right? This is a W pronoun, this is a verb, and this is a noun or something like that, right? And this lemma means the form of the word, right? So is a special form of be, right? So these are very simple NLP analysis. I believe a lot of people know. But what's interesting here is how Forte already be able to align sentence and token in a way that they're associated. So this is computed by Forte internally automatically. And it is not hard-coded in any of these processors. Any of these processors didn't know each other. They have no communication whatsoever, but we are still able to associate the sentence and token successfully, right? So, so that's hopefully you get a little bit sense about what we mean by handshaking with the data, not handshaking between the processors.
What
because
is
processor.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
What
go
if
ahead.
to add a processor?
add a processor should be, it's actually quite easy. It's the same way. Let me add a processor in the second step, because
Okay.
in order to follow this script, which I prepared. But anyway, I will add a processor in the second step.
Got it.
Okay, let me just say this is what person A, like engineer A, got. So what he did was, okay, I think that's my job for today. I'm going to save this and send it to my colleague, right? So he can actually save the whole processor in a file, just like this, save to a YAML file. If we look at this file here, right? It's a file just summarize the whole pipeline in a computer readable form, basically. The structure is not so hard, but it's not like mean for humans. So I'm not going to dive into deep of the format here, right? It would just know that we save a file, right? So now engineering A off work, send the whole file to engineering B, right? So what he do, he can actually start to use this file, right? He can create his own pipeline, right? Initialize from this file, and then boom, he get the whole process from the other person, and he say, okay, now that's that guy's work. My work is to add one additional process after this, right? So let's say this guy created 2 processors. Very simple ones we prepare, right? So the first one is like just convert everything to lowercase, and the second one is calling Spacey, another NLP toolkit, right, to do something, right? And then what he need to do to create a pipeline is he used the existing pipeline. He just loaded, right, NLP2. He add these 2 processors, just like what we did before, right? He can actually add it in 1 line, or he can actually add it in 2 lines. That doesn't really matter. Right? Let's run this. You can see that we create a new pipeline object now. So let's do the same thing, and let's see how this new pipeline runs. So let me use a slightly different, longer question, because we might want to show up, like show more how this thing works, right? So let me think of that, right? Let me ask this question: is Forte built in Petuum or CMU, right? So it's a question that the machine don't know how to answer for now, but let's see what we can do, right? Okay, I guess that's the same problem last time. Is Forte built in CMU or Petuum? Let me check whether it's running. Oh, I see what happened. I forgot to press enter at the box. Yep. Okay, it's actually finished running. Now what we do is we added a new process, 2 new processor, which do something more. And these basic processor, like we do some basic things like similar to before, but we add one more thing called name entity recognition at the end, right? So we should be able to get more information about that thing, right? So let's first make sure we have the name entity recognition data schema ready, right? And then we are going to explore what this new DataPack now contains. So this is a slightly longer script. I'm just going to explain a little bit, right? So first, we take all the sentence from the process as well, right? And then we print out each sentence. And then for each sentence, right, we Forte provide very easy like interface for you to get the content from the data, right? For each sentence, you can get all the entity mentioned from it. Mm. Right? And then we will print them out. And for each entity mentioned, you can actually get all the tokens from it, right? So it's quite natural for human, right? Because sentence and entity mention and token, they are nested. But for machine, it's different because these processes don't talk to each other, right? but Forte allow it to connect them together. So in the previous example, you might wonder, okay, NLTK, they're coming from the same library. So it might be easy for them to talk to each other, right, naturally. But Spatie is from a different library. We can still make them talk to each other quite naturally, just as if they're all from naturally the same pipeline, right? So basically, Forte is trying to provide an environment so that you can connect a lot of tools, no matter built by you, built by someone else, or built by a third-party library, very easily together, right? So if I run this, you can see that I'm showing this sentence. I lowercase it, so it's now look a little bit weird as a Forte built from CMU or Petuum. The entity mentioned, okay, so this is what ML going to have problems now, but it's not what we're going to discuss. The entity mentioned they find it's only Forte. They didn't recognize Petuum or CMU as entities, which is, I'm not too surprised because Petuum is, it's a word that's not very common, right? If you ask
You mean
something
it's not
else.
a household brand?
Well, yeah, and
we'll correct it, don't worry.
okay. Actually, I realized the more pragmatic problem is like we added a lowercase processor here, because once you lowercase something, it's really hard for a machine to do something like that. So this is a mistake made by engineering tool, which is me when building the software. But never besides that.
But
right?
Hector, that also makes me think, if I had actually written this pipeline out and I made this mistake and then I started running it, right?
Yeah.
Then, I'd be explaining to my peers that, oh, right, well, I'm not sure why Petuum wasn't recognized, right? But because you actually wrote this pipeline in such a modular format, it was very obvious, right? It was the sequencing, right? And you can actually change it, right? You can change it without too much glue code fiddling about, because all it is just resequencing it within Forte. So this bug that you just found is super easy to fix with Forte. It's as simple as copy pasting and moving things around. But if
I guess it should work even if I just copy paste it on the fly. I haven't prepared this, right? So I just move lowercase processor after space, right? So hopefully now it's much better, right? What's the question again? It's Forte built in CMU or Petuum. Okay, it's starting to run. Hopefully now it gets better. Oh, it's much better, right? So now, actually not much better. It's still only detected Forte. I guess it's basically machine learning problem, not the lowercase problem we just expect. Okay, debug failure. But anyway, but you can see that we changed the pipeline. Although the debug is failed, the pipeline changing is still successful in some sense. Yeah.
You were able to do that in a second, right?
Yeah.
I could not have done that in a pipeline that I'd written. I mean, I couldn't have done it anyway because my code is not very clean.
Yeah, so I guess yeah. So about the cleanliness, right? So Forte is not like magic. What I help to do is it just gives you some simple guideline about how to write software, ML software pipeline set. So that if you write it this way, it'll be easy to do such kind of thing, right? Without such formalism that, like this kind of formalism is like we study for years and then we come up with this. Without this formalism, you might have a slightly worse design or unclean pipeline at the beginning, so that it's harder to fix. Right?
I think that, this has been a really great display. And I guess we also saw one obvious use case, which is the ability to debug on the fly, to really quickly change a pipeline, to add more to a pipeline. I can tell you in our own experience, but also a lot of people that we talk to, the issue is also of collaboration, that people need to be able to have a pipeline transferred between different individuals and people can look at it. This debugging and also this ability to change things and speak kind of the same language, right? You don't need to understand somebody else's way of writing a pipeline. Everyone kind of has a standardized format. This in of itself is something that's pretty amazing. I just wanted to mention that Forte, as we see, is this open source. It's a toolkit you can use right now, and I think Hector already posted the GitHub for it, but you can also go to CASL project and see Forte, as well as all the other projects that are part of CASL. But that's our open source. In the Petroleum Platform, I mentioned the universal pipelines, where this kind of makes it it takes this kind of concept and takes it to the enterprise. Right? The objective is everything that you saw taken to the maximum, becoming part of a portable pipeline that can be worked on simultaneously for any type of data. That's kind of what we're building, and it's the next step that kind of takes Forte as a core and goes the next couple of miles for a company.
So I've got a question for, maybe either of you, Adel or Hector. I think, Hector, you just showed us really well what the benefits are for the engineer side of this system. But I know we have some business leaders in the audience, and I'm wondering what kind of benefits can the actual enterprise organization realize from using a system or a tool like Forte?
I can give it a shot to start with. The idea that there's an AI team is becoming more and more common, right? And the idea that you need expertise in, especially in NLP, is becoming common as well. But what do you do when you don't have 4 or 5 different NLP experts to be working on your project? What do you do when you have a new customer that requires a custom variation of a pipeline? What do you do when you start working on a new language as part of your NLP? What do you do when you have a new type of model that you're going to build as well? So all of this is it's a scaling problem, and Forte and the way, the composable method, the principle of modularity and composability is, that's basically Petuum's way of dealing with that. Break it down into these sizable chunks that you can look at that are very easy to digest, right? Like I could read that one line pipeline and tell you what it does simply because the names explain what it does. I didn't need to read through a bunch of glue code. This is our way of doing it. I think it will save a tremendous amount of time for the AI team. It also will save costs in the long run if you are, just trying to save time in building your product, your projects, or your product, really, your AI application. It'll save you the cost of wasting time debugging, things like that. Like we just try to debug. Imagine if you had actually thought, this is the problem, it's actually the lowercase, I need to reorder this in the pipeline. I give it a shot. You waste a whole day doing that debug, and you find out that didn't work. Well, that'll hurt your morale. Right? We did it in a couple of seconds. I mean, this is obviously the way that I think somebody should be working with NLP. Yeah, Hector, anything else that you would add?
I think it's a good, pretty good answer. I guess there's no one easy answer, because people come from have very different use case. I think can solve a lot of questions that people might ask, right? But if I try to make it general, it would be the scalability, eventually the scalability part, right? So the whole idea of CASL, composable automation, is actually for scalable machine learning, right? Scalability not only means you scale model to larger models, it's more like scale your solution building, right? From 1 or 2 solution, 10 solution, to hundreds and thousands of solutions, right? So composable and easy to maintain code, modularization, reusable, these are all properties that building towards scalability, right? So if we really want to scale your a company solution to some level, thousands of things, you definitely don't want to rewrite, spend your time on the pipelines. Just imagine you spend 2 days on orchestrating or deploying a pipeline per application. But if you have 100, that's half of a year or something like that gone, right?
Yeah. Actually, that is a statistic that we've seen, that it takes between 4 to 6 months.
I mean, 2 days are way under estimate of the time for building a pipeline.
That's right.
So we're seeing a reduction time of what used to be 4 to 6 months, and now it can be done in like 2 days.
No, I mean, I said I use an example of like you might spend 2 days per pipeline, but that's a really underestimate. You might actually spend 2 weeks per pipeline, and then you have 100 of them. What to do with that? Right?
Yeah, that time savings element, right? Especially if you go to scale.
Okay, well, let's open up the FAQ for now, or the Q&A. I guess it's more of a Q&A. So we can get some questions from the audience. And we have some questions that people submitted in advance as well, but please feel free to type any questions that you might have for Adele or Hector, and we'll get those answered. There is one question that came in already asking if this is for NLP text only, and what other types of data could this be used on?
Okay, that's actually a great question. As I said, Forte started for NLP, but we already at a stage to expand that. We right now we have already successfully added audio support to the system, and then we are very close. We already have a prototype for computer vision supports, and it's going to be like in experimental interface will be probably come up in a month or something, or at least in this quarter, right? What's interesting about Forte's way of handling more modality or more data types is it will not only support that data type, it will also support a relationship between different data types. So if Forte we add audio supports, we already add linking between audio and a piece of text. You can like cross-reference a piece of text with that piece of audio easily right now. So if in the future, when we added the image part, we will also have a cross-reference. You can imagine a region of the image is being described by a piece of text or even a piece of audio, right? So that's actually opened a lot of more exciting data management that Forte can do.
You know, this actually reminds me, right? So suppose you have a speech recognition system. Suppose there's translation associated with that speech recognition system. Suppose on top of that, maybe now you want to start translating videos and also explain what's happening in those videos, right? So we're reaching a point, I guess, with Forte where all of this could be done with the same, maybe with the same pipeline, right? You could analyze the different images in the video. You could convert the speech that's spoken into text. You could translate it. You could run some kind of entity recognition or sentiment analysis on all of that, right? And all of that would be done via Forte, I think, right? Via a pipeline that's extremely composable and highly portable, usable by everyone.
Yeah, so that's the very exciting part, and that's why we decided we're not going to stop with NLP, because we feel like this kind of thing doesn't exist in the market, in the open source world or any products I've seen, and it's actually like just by adding CV, it's like I would feel like it's a multiplier than an addition, right? Because the relationship between different type of data is very valuable.
Yeah. You know, one more thing I can add, and I think there's probably more questions, is, you know, the mission of Petuum and CASL is kind of the same at the end of the day. It is, you know, AI for all is the tagline that we use. And this is one way of thinking of it. You know, if we're simplifying this stuff, we're actually making steps to a world where people can do more and more complex AI without having to have too much expertise. So we might reach a point where it becomes more and more trivial for somebody to just pull up a notebook, make a pipeline, and do some analysis of their own. I think that's the world that we're going towards. It's not just Forte. I think a lot of people are thinking towards the same goal.
Yeah, if you ask me about like the future of ML, like what could happen, I'm not sure whether that's true, but it's like the hope, like all ML people hope is everyone can use ML on their own, right? So that we lower the barrier. We are building towards the lowering the barrier of these high level like black technology and open it up to everyone. So this is really beneficial because for a lot of people, like they might have a lot of privacy or security concern when dealing with their own data, right? But when these things, when they can like easily start to build these things on their own, just by knowing some basic NLP, or to be honest, we can even provide, we already have very interesting GUI for them. Right? They don't even need to know about programming. They can start to do these things and analyze its own stuff, right? That's pretty cool. I to be honest, there's a project I work with a university student who developed like a meeting node transcribing system just by connecting these up, right? So he's an undergraduate. He knows nothing about like all the technology before, but he is able to like build a prototype for this. One of the collaborating professor I have like sent me this, and he said, it's really impressive. I never see a student do this so quickly. I actually told them, okay, the student used everything from Forte. He didn't build too much. But it's kind of not fair for the student, but that's also true, right? So yeah.
I wanted to see if I could get you both. We only have 5 minutes left, but just kind of on that topic of democratizing access to AI and to ML. I can see there being pros and cons to that, right? You know, and some potential alignment and safety concerns that could arise, as well as maybe some harms when it comes to data privacy and, you know, just like a lot of different potential outcomes. So if you both wouldn't mind sharing what your thoughts are on the future of NLP and AI in general in the coming years.
It's a big one. It's a big question. Right?
It's the biggest one. I would argue it's the biggest question of our time.
I would suggest maybe, I don't want to get too political, but consider the Twitter acquisition of Elon Musk, which might not be happening anymore. Who knows, right? But consider the idea of speech and all of the bots that are all over Twitter, all of the nonsense that you have to deal with if you are a Twitter user, right? All the scams and everything, and you see that all over the place. A lot of people don't benefit monetarily from solving those problems on an open platform right now, like Twitter. But it's, you know, it should exist. I should be able to screen out all of the bots. I should be able to check to see if something is a scam. I should be able to also, you know, do the other cool things that I could do with NLP, such as create my own bots for myself, right? Or evaluate and maybe create a report for myself out of Twitter. You know, not many people are going to pay for this. Not many people want to make money off of this, but the open source community could do this really easily if it was easy to do. If we could, I mean, the way I think of it is, if you could reduce the amount of energy or effort required to create the system that would create so much value for the world, then somebody will probably end up doing it a little bit. That's what open source is all about. That's what Wikipedia is all about. Right? So I consider this to be a very pro thing. I can't think of the strong negatives. Maybe it's a great tool that the dark side and the light side of the force can use, but I honestly see the more democratization, the better it is for everyone. And I personally would like tools to be made by people that I can use to make my life better for NLP. I just like that, and I know I'm not going to do a lot of this, but if we can make it easier for other people to make those tools, then maybe those tools are going to start to emerge.
Yeah, I guess like the future of this it's a big topic and might go a little bit off topic, so forgive me for that. Right? So
it's a great topic.
So I think the AI for all, it's gonna happen because like AI, like the barrier is just gonna get lower, right? No matter what we do, the barrier is just gonna get lower, right? So AI for all, I would say, like I can at least think of from two angles. One is AI for all companies, like business units, and AI for all individual users, right? So for all companies, it's kind of important because there's a long tail AI problem right now where a lot of company has a very specific use case and they cannot find a provider to solve it because long tail means this use case too specific. If a provider solves this problem, they won't be able to sell it to another person. So it's not scalable, right? And that company just cannot find a solution, right? So if we bring the barrier low enough that the company can easily build it, at least hire a contractor to easily build this part, they don't need to worry about the long tail problem is gonna be solved a little bit more, right? On the other hand, on the user part, like individual person about ML tools. So for individual users, first of all, it's like if they rely on cloud providers or big providers, there are always risks associated with privacy and cloud. Even if no one means any harm to them, there will still chances like bugs or breaches that could happen, right? So this is a concern for all users, no matter what. So from the privacy concern, if someone are able to do something on their own, it's always be an option, an option for certain cases. But on the other hand, it's like a double-edged sword, right? So on the other hand, if these kind of cool technology or very powerful technology is so cheap that everyone can do it, someone may use them to do something bad, but I don't know, right? So that's the other concern that we might have. But no matter what, I don't think that's the trend. It's inevitable. It's not that if we don't build Forte, that will prevent that. No, right? Everyone is doing that, so we probably is just gonna go ahead and build the good tools for people. So hope that the right people have the right power or something like that. I said I'm going to go off topic. It's too much.
Oh, that's great. That's great to hear. Well, we're running a little over on time, but I think this was a great conversation. It was fascinating, very cool to see what you guys have built. And for our audience members, I put a plug in again to send us an email to marketing@petuum.com if you are interested in our private beta, or if you would like to learn a little bit more about the private beta, or if you just are a member of an ML ops team and you want to share your experiences or get some of our advice, please reach out. My thanks to both speakers, and we'll be doing another talk in 2 weeks. So we'll keep everybody posted.
Right.
Bye.